What's happening, financial coaches? It's Pete here. Hope everything's going well. I want to talk to you today about how, in a casual conversation, I pitch coaching. And it's a little bit different. It's certainly evolved over the years. Everyone's going to be a little bit different at this, depending on kind of the engagement that you're in, right? It might be a business networking setting. It might be with someone who is interested in coaching. But basically, I'm going to talk about, having a casual conversation with someone who is asking me about what I do, right? And they're kind of curious. And I think the tendency here, and why I bring this up, is that most people will try to go into kind of a standard sales pitch, right? Features, benefits. This is what I do. This is why it's helpful. This is what I do. This is why it's helpful, right? Or they'll explain or they'll give a story about what they do. For me, it's very, very simple and it's very, very short. And the reason I do this is because I want to try to get people to internalize what I do as much as possible. So let's say I'm at a barbecue and someone asks, "Hey, Pete, what do you do?" And if I say, "Hey, I'm a financial coach," usually what people say, "Well, what is that? What do you do?" And here is where I might diverge from other people. And so feel free to use my tactic or not. It may not work for you, but a lot of people might say, "Well, a financial coach helps people uncover their values and then set goals and do blah 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 blah, and do this stuff." And you've probably heard it, and a lot of that stuff just kind of goes right over people's heads because it sounds like boilerplate. It's pretty ethereal. I mean, it's just kind of broad. It's not very specific, and it's like, okay, that's good. I have goal, but maybe that lands with some people. But usually, what I'll say is, well, what I do, well, let me ask you this: is there something financially related that you're working on? Is there something that you're trying to get done right now? And some people might say, hey, I'm trying to actually refinance my mortgage right now because of the low interest rates, or I'm one of the things that we've been thinking about is, what should we do about the college funding for little Jamie? Or they might say, hey, we're actually, we've got some credit card debt. When we got married, my wife had some debt on her credit card, and we're just trying to pay that off as quickly as possible. Whatever it might be, right? And so if they're going to open up about something that's important to them, something that they're working on, maybe even just something they're thinking about, then I would say, well, that's something that I would work on if it is something that I work on. And I might say, listen, yeah, a lot of people are looking at refinancing right now. It's trying to reduce their monthly expenses. The interest rates are great. One of the things that I help people do is kind of evaluate what their options are because, if you can refinance at a lower rate, you might be able to get your payment down. But instead of just taking that lower payment, what you might be able to do is refinance it into a shorter mortgage. So what I help people do is take a look at, instead of refinancing into a 30-year mortgage and saving yourself $200 a month and just stretching that mortgage out and resetting the clock on it, what I've found with some people is if we look at it, we can keep their payment the same as what they have right now, but actually shorten that mortgage up from a 30-year to a 15-year. So a lot of people are going from 25, 26 years left on their mortgage to only 15 years left on their mortgage, and it's not costing them anything else on a monthly basis. And they might perk up at that, right? That might be something to say, yeah, it's not that we can't afford it. I just thought maybe I'd take advantage of the interest rates, and going to a 15-year might actually help get them a lower rate, right? And the idea of, wow, I might pay it off 10 years earlier than I was paying it off at the same price point, at the same monthly cost, right? At the same monthly mortgage payment. That might be something that really resonates with them. And then you might be able to have that conversation again. Hey, maybe can we talk about this? Can we set up a time? I'd love to hear a little bit more about this or some of the other strategies. I might throw out that, hey, I've got some other strategies I'm paying every other week and kind of round up and some of these other things that also help shrink that down a little bit, or rolling in bonuses or whatever it might be. So, that stuff that's appropriate for them, specific to them, that might really resonate and get them to think about what they've got going on and rethink it, or think about other options and say, hey, that's what you do. Let's talk about that, right? It may not be my specialty, but it may be something that's come up. And right now, this is something that comes up quite a bit. But maybe it's saving for college. And what I might say is, hey, a lot of people will set up a 529 plan or a college savings plan, a cover dollar, whatever it might be. But a lot of people are also looking at using a Roth IRA as an alternative, right? Funding that because of the way it's looked at in the FAFSA process. And, it's money that, you can have for retirement in case you don't need it for college. And, depending on whether your child goes to an expensive school or maybe it doesn't go to college at all, right? It's an alternative. And so I kind of help people explain, or I help explain why that's different than saving for college specifically, and why there might be some pros and cons to that, and kind of going into that. And they might say, hey, well, we're thinking about college and I don't know this. I would love to hear a little bit more, and just you get some more food from thought for you. And so what that does is it opens up another conversation, and not necessarily something I will charge for, because that may be their first session, the session where I'm just trying to discover what they want to do and see if we're an appropriate fit. But usually, putting it in the context of what they are trying to do allows us to have a conversation about what financial coaching is, as opposed to just kind of throwing out this broad description of financial coaching and hope they latch on and hope they say, yes, I would like you to help me uncover what my underlying values are and attach those to my goals, and then do some long-term planning and some daily task scheduling to achieve those goals, right? Because that's so broad, it's so basic, it's so similar to every other type of achievement path that we talk about, that it almost doesn't mean anything to anyone. So usually I will just ask, is there something you're working on right now? Is there something of concern to you? Is there something that you're trying to accomplish right now financially? And I'm always surprised what it might come up from that. It can be sometimes like, hey, we're actually thinking of getting married. I recently got engaged, and we're kind of trying to figure out what our wedding budget should be, and we can talk about, well, wedding hacks, and rethinking what a wedding looks like from the inside out, right? And different venues and ways to control costs, right? Whatever it might be. But there could be a lot of opportunities if you just really help the client or the prospect talk about what's important to them, and then give them some help, kind of thinking through that, some practical tips, and that can open the door to a actual client coach relationship later. So hopefully that helps. It's the way I kind of work right now. But take what you can from it, and use it if it's something that might help you out too. So that's it. Talk to you later.